Hi, everyone, and welcome to the CHP podcast. My name is Ariana Scalfo. I'm your host. I am the director of coaching here at CHP. Y'all are probably really familiar with me by now, but who you don't know is I don't want to say new coach, but he's been in the CHP system for a while now, is Trevor. And Trevor, can you say your last name for me? I'm Italian, but I don't want to mess it up.
It's okay. Yeah, my last name is Trevor Tartaglia.
Tartaglia. Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. But some people have Italian last names, but then pronounce them not Italian. So I didn't want to be that person that was like Tartaglia, and you'd be like, no, it's Tartaglia.
I don't get mad at anyone if they say it in an Americanized way.
Okay,
Tartaglia.
but I just wanted to make sure it was good. So Trevor has been working with me for over a year now, basically, on rescuing all of our templates when that project was underway and getting all of them uh, into improved hard copy, solving some of the issues we were facing with the old template site. And then now we're working on getting our templates to a V3 format, which would be new and improved. And basically, Trevor's brilliant. So Trevor is also now coaching for us because I never want him to leave. Um, Trevor has a really cool background. He played rugby as a kid, ran cross country, then got into yoga. So Trevor has taught yoga. You were like one of the first Lulu ambassadors, right?
First in Canada, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's that, right? And then he joined the Canadian Forces as a combat engineer. So he's got military experience. And then he found CrossFit. So he's got CrossFit experience. And then he went back to university and studied engineering physics. Then he was working as a personal trainer, a head coach, and programmer for a CrossFit gym. He's teaching yoga. And then got into cycling, which is where we are today, with Trevor being into anything and everything bicycles, which I guess really does promote like the engineering side of things and the science side of things, because you can really, really get into the thick of it with cycling. I think in a way that you can't do unless you have like a stride pod and a treadmill with running.
Yeah.
So welcome. I know this was like the longest intro ever, but I just want you guys to know and appreciate Trevor. Um, Trevor, welcome. Welcome to the
Thank you.
team.
Thanks for having
Welcome
me.
to the podcast. Talk to me about um, what you're training for now and what your training looks like now before we jump into the past. Because I feel like
Yeah.
your past is kind of all over the place, but like, what are you doing now? And like, what does that look like?
My past is all over the place like anyone else that's autistic and high functioning ADHD, so that's another whole other thing. But right now I'm training mostly for gravel cycling. So my first big race of the season is going to be the Traca Gravel 200, which is in Girona, Spain. It's kind of the big race that's growing in Europe. Some people have started calling it kind of the Unbound of Europe. So I'm doing the 200-kilometer version because that's kind of long enough that it's not a ride I would do on a regular basis, but it's not like the 360-kilometer version where it's too long to have fun. So 200 is kind of that sweet spot. So that's my first big event. And then there's a possibility that I could do Unbound, or not Unbound, do Leadville, the Leadville 100 this summer. Still waiting on confirmation that I have a ticket, but that would be a big goal. Kind of afraid of the altitude because from what we've seen, altitude seems to affect heavier people more than skinny regular cyclists. So we'll see what happens with that. And then the big goal later on in the season is cyclocross because cyclocross is all that matters. And why ride? I'm doing 8-hour races this summer, but why ride for 8 hours when you can ride for 45 minutes? And then outside of cycling, training in the gym, I kind of got back into CrossFit this year after a 3-year hiatus through the pandemic of not wanting to go into a gym. No longer coaching at the gym I was at before, so looking for a new home. But kind of this fall, I was burnt out on doing intensity on the bike, so I just did kind of zone 2 rides on the bike and went and got my intensity at CrossFit. So kind of just generally training to not look like a cyclist when I'm on the bike, to kind of look a bit out of the ordinary when I'm riding.
You definitely
Yeah.
do. You have the like refrigerator vibe. Um, like refrigerator
Especially
on.
because I'm a big tech nerd, so I try and optimize my bike to be fast. So I have like really skinny handlebars, 38 centimeter handlebars, but my shoulders are like 46 centimeters. So I there probably is actually no aerodynamic benefit at all because I'm bigger than I could than most cyclists that are riding 38 centimeter handlebars. But it makes me feel good, so that's the most important thing.
As long as you're aware.
Exactly.
It always makes me giggle about like the trying to max out the efficiency of your bike and like reducing the weight of your bicycle by like 3 grams here, but like you're a 200-pound person or like 98 kilo person. It's like my brother, that ship has sailed. Like you can do it. Don't get me wrong, but like
And
the weight.
that's one thing. This is my I just got my new bike for the season. If I can shout out a sponsor, Squid Bikes. They make some really pretty custom painted bikes. But it's a steel bike just because yes, carbon bikes are lighter, but for me, the difference in weight between this steel bike and my carbon bike for last year is about a pound and a half. So
Yeah,
that's less than 1% of my total system weight. So probably doesn't make any difference. So I'd rather have the more robust and kind of a more comfortable ride of a steel bike rather than a carbon bike. So
yeah.
yeah,
Especially if you're doing things like gravel. If you fall on a
yeah,
steel bike, you can just kind of get back up and keep going.
yeah,
Carbon, there's always a little bit of a fear.
yeah,
Okay, cool. So I'm really stoked for you. I hope you get into Leadville, but I think that race in Spain is going to be awesome
yeah,
regardless. Um, so you recently wrote our cycling and like functional training, which is essentially
yeah.
CrossFit template. So I'm assuming that this also kind of mirrors what your training has looked like recently.
That's
Um,
actually literally what my training has been.
cool.
From October to February, I ran that template, and then I've done a block of kind of more specific gravel stuff, building kind of tolerance and tempo, and then some more of that high end stuff, which is less in the template. But yeah, so I ran that exactly that template after I wrote it, just to make sure that it was there was nothing I wanted to change or that it was actually what I wanted it to be. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Nothing you I feel like that's important because you don't really you can write a template and be pretty sure it'll work, but then you go in to do it and you're like even just little things for me when I'm writing programming, like I like to know the structure of the gym that my client is
Yeah,
in because like if you're writing a superset of cable tricep pushdowns and then something else that for them is like across the gym,
absolutely. Yeah,
that's really frustrating. And then especially for like CrossFit, if you're trying to CrossFit in like a typical gym that has like a sort of workout space, but like the bikes aren't nearby or the treadmills aren't nearby, it can kind of get really confusing. So like going through and doing the template and actually making sure that it works
yeah.
and flows is so essential to me anyway, to making it enjoyable to do. Because I'm the kind of person where if it's on paper, I'll do it. Like, I'm not going to not do it, but I will bitch the whole time.
And that's what one things that I did add to that template is the option to replace some of the scheduled metcons with just group classes.
Mhm.
So I actually follow the template doing only group classes, so not doing the specific workouts, CrossFit workouts that I plan for myself, but doing kind of the strength portion, then a group class, just to make sure that kind of the interval sets on the bike were still doable regardless
Less.
of what you did in the gym. Because one of the strategies that I like to use for, especially for cyclists, is to actually program more shorter intervals in the zone when they're doing more functional fitness kind of stuff. So in the template, there is some long tempo, but there's nothing longer than 15 minutes. But a
Mhm.
lot of the time, it's just like 5 minutes at threshold rather than the kind of 8, 10, 12 minutes, which makes it a bit easier to do other things in the gym.
Yeah. So, now that we're talking about the template and your training, I think the most important thing to cover is kind of like how you ended up here in your love of cycling. Because we know that you did CrossFit. We know that I think that's going to educate our next conversation, which is going to be what we're doing with the templates, right? But like, how did you become the Excel wizard you are today, and how did you become the cyclist you are today, and like, looking forward, like what are the things that most excite you about these templates? Because you and I talk all the time. We have all these ideas, we have all these things that we coach and that we do, um, but getting them to work in an Excel spreadsheet and eventually an app always takes a lot more doing than talking. So, can you bring me through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I go back to how I started cycling, it was basically I bought a fixed gear just to get around town while I was in university,
Doing
and
your
started riding fixed gears like everyone did in 2014, and then started racing on fixed gears while I was doing CrossFit. Basically, when the fixed gear scene died with the end of the Red Hook crit, just moved over to gravel like everyone else to kind of fill the hole. But as far as coaching and everything, yeah, I've been coaching for over 10 years now. I started teaching yoga classes while I was still in the army. I discovered yoga while I remember being 16 years old, playing rugby and like being injured all the time. And my physiotherapist recommended that I start doing yoga for kind of flexibility. So I was 16 years old, found this yoga class in the basement of a church that was by my house. So I was like this 16-year-old with a bunch of women in their 40s doing yoga classes on Tuesday nights. And then got really into it and just kept doing yoga, and then ended up doing my teacher training and started teaching classes and everything. Um, but as I got more and more into bikes, doing group rides and everything, some of the people that I rode with asked me to do their strength training templates or their strength training for them because they knew they needed to do strength training, and they knew that I was doing CrossFit and did lots of strength stuff, so they asked me to do their strength work. And then there's always that idea of if you have a strength coach and you have an endurance coach, but they never talk to each other, it's not the best thing because I can program someone a heavy set of squats and then they have to go do VO2 intervals the next day, which is kind of the worst scenario that you can have. So it's always better to just have one person that at least is going over the general direction of what you're doing and putting more of the emphasis on one thing or the other and deciding what's more important for you, or at least helping you make that decision. So from that, I started to work with runners and cyclists doing their endurance work and their strength work, and kind of doing that full global planning. Um, and then obviously from that, that's literally hybrid training, and that's kind of how I was training myself. So I discovered Alex through Juggernaut back in like 2012, 2013 when they put out his first version of the book, and just right away caught on to that. Followed CHP throughout the entire time, and then yeah, we kind of got in contact because I was doing. I did the power building template during the pandemic that you did. We just started talking, and then came to the point that you needed some help building out new templates, and kind of my background in coaching plus my engineering background because I studied engineering physics. I'm pretty good with Excel, so I offered to help kind of modernize and bring the templates up to date. So rather than just being a list of exercises to do, there's a bit more adaptability and a bit more intelligence behind the template, which kind of brings in the discussion of AI coaching and where that's going to come. These templates are definitely not going to be AI coaching, but there's a little bit of very basic intelligence that's included in them.
which is so brilliant because you and I have talked about this a lot, where it's like, you know, because you had also, I think you did the hybrid master course as well around that time. So like
Yep.
bringing you in just made so much sense because you knew our methodology, you knew our training, you were doing it, and you also are a wizard at the one thing that I am awful at. Full disclosure, I can't excel to save my life. So, uh, Trevor has saved my life as an example. But, you know, we always talk about how the beauty of, and you mentioned this just earlier when you were talking about how having someone do strength coaching and someone else do your endurance coaching, sometimes you get an overlap of work that doesn't serve the athlete very well. You've just got too much similar work, or the schedule isn't working out. And I find that, yes, with coaching hybrid sports and multiple sports, you're lining up stimulus, you're lining up the appropriate stimulus, but you're also lining up the appropriate recovery
Yeah.
from that stimulus. Like, each are equally important when you're writing programming for a hybrid athlete. You want to make sure that they're recovering from the stimulus that you just gave them, so you can't give them too similar of a stimulus, 1 to 2 days afterward, so on and so forth. And I find that with templates, it's very easy to give a person a list of work to do, which would be a
Mhm.
stimulus. You got this list of exercises, this list of workouts, and like an ideal layout. But what, to me anyway, templates have always been limiting is you can't, unless you're speaking with that person, you can't also help them the way that you would as a coach with dosing out their recovery, spreading things out, choosing when to back things down, choosing when to pick things up. How do you help someone auto regulate? It gets really difficult. As a coach, you just do it for them. You see their performance and you help them auto regulate and you give them the next week of work. But when you're just handing someone a template, how do you give them the same level of self-awareness and work and rest management that we pride ourselves on at CHP? Like, how do we convey that? It's never going to be perfect, obviously. Like,
No.
otherwise, that's the beauty of coaching. I don't think anyone could ever, AI could never replace coaches. There's just too much subjective work, I think, that goes into coaching. But as far as like work rest is concerned, the way that we've approached the templates this time around, I think it makes me feel a lot better, because I feel like they represent the the biggest benefits, I think, of the
Mhm.
CHP kind of hybrid coaching methodology, and it represents the biggest ability for clients to be able to manage their workload week to week based on their schedule. So some of the biggest things that we're changing between, the V2 templates, which are the ones that we re-uploaded after the template site went down, which RIP. um, but going into V3, what are some of the, just because you made them, I'm asking you this question, the biggest changes between V2 and V3 that's going to make these templates um, just work better and offer more options?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I think that happens with templates is they're written for, like you mentioned, kind of an ideal situation, the ideal person, and that's not really. There's no way to get around that when writing just kind of a general program. You can try and put options in there and things like that, but you're never going to cover all of the cases. And the templates we're writing definitely don't cover all of the cases either, but they allow the athlete to make choices ahead of time, which will help them adjust the template to their specific situation. So even in the V2 templates, the copies that we did, um, one of the things that I added was the start date. So if you can say I'm starting the program on this day, and then by adjusting the start date, you can kind of adjust which day is your rest day and which day is your long day, because we always put long days the Saturday and Sunday. And the rest day is often the Monday. But for say someone that's working that works the weekends, or they work shifts and whatnot, that might not be the best thing for them. So they can at least adjust what day of the week is considered the first day and where I'm going to put my long workouts. Coming into the V3 templates, there is the ability to adjust the volume manually. So this isn't in the cycling template, but it's going to be in the update of the running template. So you can pick between 2 and 4, or between 3 and 5. I don't remember exactly. Strength workouts a week. So if you can only get to the gym 2 days a week, you can say, okay, I want to train 2 days a week. And then there's other options like um, to extend those sessions. So instead of doing where you can basically add in some extra core work at the end of those sessions. So that's kind of one of the things that a lot of athletes, if they have extra time in the gym, is not going to add a bunch of fatigue for that session that's going to affect their next endurance session, but can actually help them add more volume in the gym. That can be beneficial as well. and then just adding different objectives for the endurance work in there. So in the original templates, there's kind of the slider of, do you want to be working mostly on endurance, mostly on strength, or somewhere in between, and that slider is still there. But if we take, for example, the 5K template, that template was kind of written, at least in my interpretation, for someone that is already used to running and just wants to run a couple times a week while they're doing powerlifting style training. So in the new version of the 5K template, there's going to be an option for someone that wants to run their first 5K, someone that wants to build on their 5K to basically set a PR, or at least that's try and improve on their 5K time, and then someone that wants to maintain their 5K time. And then in the strength work, there's going to be options for powerlifting focus, where basically trying to build on the strength in the deadlift, squat, bench, or kind of a general GPP focus, which is a bit more variable. The exercises change a bit more often. There's more options using machines and dumbbells, a lot more single leg work. So for someone that wants to get stronger, wants to build muscle, but doesn't necessarily care about squat, bench, deadlift, or powerlifting, it's going to give them a second option. And for athletes that are coming from running to strength, it's probably going to give them some more options that are a bit more accessible, a bit less intimidating, that they can, rather than just right away starting with a back squat, they can start with goblet squats and leg press, and then build up to uh, back squats. Another change that we added is actually adapting volume based off of the athlete fatigue. So this is something that it requires the athlete to interact with the template. But if you buy a template and you open it up, you're going to see that after each workout, there's a fatigue evaluation from 1 to 5. 1 was things are super easy. I'm not too fatigued. 5 was, oh, that session was really hard. I almost died. And
Mm-hmm.
if you accumulate a bunch of 5s in a row, it's going to make the next workouts lower volume than they were originally. But if you accumulate a bunch of 1s in a row, it's going to make the next workouts higher volume, because it's going to assume that you can take more. So this is a good way for the templates to kind of adapt to the individual athlete to help them, like you said, recover a bit more, or add less stress if they're not recovering as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think about all those things we said, with the single 5K template, which is a 12-week template, someone could go through an entire year of training and never do exactly the same plan. So someone's they're used to going to the gym, they want to run their first 5K. So they start with the general strength training and first 5K plan. And then they go over it again. This time they've already run 5K, but they want to improve. They do the 5K building, but keep the general strength. And then they say, hey, I'd like to be a bit more serious in the gym. I want to focus on the power lifts. So I'm going to maintain my 5K and I'm going to do the powerlifting plan. And then if they want to do an extra cycle, they can say, hey, I'm liking this powerlifting stuff. I'm going to keep doing the powerlifting stuff, but slide the slider over to endurance. And then I want to try and do a new PR on my 5K 6 months later. So they do the 5K building, but powerlifting on kind of on maintenance. So with
Yeah.
the same template, you're going to basically be able to run it differently every time that you do it based off of your current objectives.
Which is like so brilliant. And I think this is kind of what when Anthony and I wrote the power building and off season template, this was kind of our our like our hope. But I think Anthony is much better in Excel than I am, which is saying a lot. Um, but even Anthony and I didn't know what could be accomplished with a spreadsheet, and I think having you involved has been so brilliant because we'll, knock these ideas back and forth and you're like, oh, I think I can do that. I think I can build that. I think I can make that. It's just so cool because then you just come back 2 weeks later and you're like, I built it. It's done. But it's awesome because I think it really, because you and I were chatting about this, yeah, the powerlifting and 5K template, it's our most popular. It's super effective. People have made really, really great progress using it. But then you jump into strength and 10K, which is, I think, one of the biggest, as a person who has to help people choose templates, it's been one of the biggest difficulties for me because I'm like, all right, well, strength and 10K doesn't have any powerlifting. Powerlifting and 5K doesn't really have general strength. but they're drastically different distances. And even strength, powerlifting and 5K had a lot of running for a 5K. So if you
Yeah.
are brand new to running, it hit you with a lot of volume right off the bat. So you and I, we've been collecting feedback from people ever since we moved the templates over about ways that we could improve the templates for people, things that they wish the templates did or had. And I'm just really excited because I think that this really does answer a lot of those questions and concerns that people had, or just supplies them with a built-in answer
Yeah.
for most of the questions that I'm asked, either in the forums or via email, on how to adjust templates based on schedule, on fatigue, on experience level. So I'm super stoked to be able to do a V3 for the strength and 5K, I guess is what we'll call it at this point. But that's done, and then doing it for the 10K, actually making a half marathon template, having the marathon, the 50K, and then we discussed doing a 100K to 100 miler,
And
which
then adding trail running versions for the equivalent distances. I don't know if you wanted to scoop that yet, but I'm putting it out there that I'm working on basically equivalent of the 10K plus strength, but it's going to be short distance trail, and then half marathon plus strength, but it's going to be medium distance trail, and then marathon plus strength is going to be long distance trail. So yeah, we're going to add separate templates for trail running, which I think a lot of people will be happy to see, because trail running is kind of exploding since the beginning of the pandemic.
it's my favorite. I prefer it. So
Yeah.
I'm super happy that we're making these templates, because I think too, like, when I start working with runners that are going from road running to trail, or someone who's new to running who's going to trail, um, the work is really different. Like, you can't just be like, go and run 400s. The trail's changing under you all the time. Like, you're not going to have, the same 400 time over and over again. There's going to be a hill, there's going to be a dip, there's going to be some footwork to do. Elevation change becomes a huge part of it. So being able to design a template that allows people to select the elevation that they're going to be running is going to be brilliant, because for right now, I mean, none of our running templates really have hills.
No,
So
just practicing how to power walk is going to be is a
yeah,
huge thing for for trail
yeah.
running.
Yeah, so there's just so much trail running specific stuff that we'll be able to pack into these templates and really make them work for people that want to be out there running trail, running mountains, or they're running road and want to transition to trail. I think that there's
Mhm.
just so much knowledge and experience that we can pack in, um, that'll make trail running more accessible and more enjoyable to someone who either A, doesn't have a lot of good trails to practice on, because I think that's huge. Is like, how do I train for this race, but I don't have access to drive an hour to the park where it's taking place
Mhm.
every weekend? How do I train for it? Um, or, I've got a bunch of trails in my backyard, but I have no idea how to train on them because I walk half the time. And having someone be like, that's normal. You're actually
Yeah.
doing great. No, I'm really excited. So you and I have been working really hard on the running templates. You've been working extremely hard on the running templates. Let me just say that's mostly you. So I'm really excited to get all of those re-released. And I think the most fun part is knowing that you and I coach and perform all of these sports. So there's a lot of our excitement, I think, is getting reinfused into these templates, which, I mean, these templates were written and released, what, 2018, 2019?
I don't even know. I think
Years ago.
some of them were because some of them were the same templates that were released in 2014 in the original Hybrid Athlete book,
Yeah.
with some minor tweaks. So
Yeah.
they've been around for a while.
Yeah. And I
Which
think, you and I talked about this, like, CHP's been around for a decade.
mhm.
There's so much more we can do now. There's so much more we have done. There's so many more. I just, they were due for a re-up. They were due for a refresh. So I'm stoked that we've been able to jump in and like take all of our excitement about them and like reinfuse it into the
Mhm.
templates, because I think they deserve it. The work is really good. They're really effective. People have made amazing gains. Like I have to post them on the Instagram. Some guy just messaged to use our strength and marathon or strength and 50K template to win a marathon in Antarctica.
Cool.
Antarctica?
Awesome.
Epic, right? Like what? So, they work. I just think there's so much more room to, like you said, make them into a product that someone can
Mhm.
use over and over and over and over again. And like, it's never really going to phase out of being useful to that
Yeah.
person as long as they're interested in still running that distance um, a little bit. Like, it's just going to be awesome. So, yeah, I'm super excited. I hope that everyone else is too, but at this point I really don't care. I'm just excited and you're excited for
So
this
there's the question of we're talking about these templates and how they can be amazing and solve a bunch of problems, and they definitely will. But then there's where do the templates end, and where does personalized coaching become a better option then? Because these templates, the goal is not to replace coaches. I'm a coach myself. There's definitely a lot of value in an individualized plan for a specific person. So I
Yep.
think it does make sense to talk about like how these templates will fit into CHB as a coaching
Hmm.
platform first, and then what are some cases where someone might want to look at working with a coach instead of getting a template.
I think that something that I encounter a lot, because I'm in the Instagram DMs and the emails and stuff, helping people choose templates, helping people choose coaching. Something that I encounter a lot is individuals with injuries
Mm-hmm.
or um, preferences or more sports than
Mm-hmm.
we represent in the template. And they're like, which template is closest? And I'm like, none of them. Like, literally none of them, to be honest. Like, because there's just no way. I mean, to have someone who's like, okay, well, I'm doing MMA, jujitsu, training strength, I'm cycling, and I want to work on my high jump. Which
Yeah.
template do I choose? And I'm like, I would lie to you if I told you that one of our templates could actually appropriately cover your needs the way that you need them to be covered, especially given that you're doing, multiple sports, multiple high intensity, low intensity days at jujitsu. I don't know which days you spar.
Yeah.
Like how do we account for that with a template? It's gonna work, but it might take twice as long,
Yeah.
or it might introduce excessive fatigue, and then you have to kind of back it down and figure it out by yourself. There's a lot of self management that would be completely eliminated by coaching, like
And
just
that comes to the point of, I think one of the big advantages of a coach is helping you set those priorities. Because really, someone comes to me and they say, "I want to improve those six things." My first thing is, okay, but what's the most
what's first.
important? Which one do we need to improve first? Do you
Mhm.
have a jujitsu tournament in 2 months, but your high jump is just something you want to do by the end of the year?
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to work on your jump other than kind of general strength for jujitsu, and we're going
Mhm.
to basically set a
Plyometric.
list of priorities, which is something that a template can never really do. And athletes with the templates can try and do it themselves, but having that outside perspective, and it's one of the reasons that most coaches have coaches themselves. I say that
Mhm.
being in between coaches myself currently, but
Same.
most coaches have coaches because it's hard to set those priorities yourself and be objective and have kind of that view, that exterior view of, okay, well, what's most important now, what's going to be the most bang for your buck. And
Mhm.
then you talked about preferences and helping you identify when your preferences are actually something that's beneficial for you versus
Mhm.
when your preferences are negative towards you. So I'll use myself as an example. I hate tempo and threshold workouts. Ask me to do an intensity for more than 5 minutes and I'm just not going to do it. But I know I have to do them because of my race in Girona. There's a couple of climbs that are going to be 30-minute climbs, that it's going to be 30 minutes at tempo. So I've been forcing myself to do
Yep.
kind of a longer tempo intervals as last block of training. But if you leave me to myself, I'm going to do 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off every second day because that's a wheelhouse workout for me. I like it. I'm an anaerobic athlete at the base, and
Yeah.
that stuff, it makes me feel good, and I like doing them. But having to do those kind of long ZO2 workouts and those long tempo intervals is something that a coach has made me realize I have to do in the past. And even though I know in theory that's what I should be doing, having someone put in your face of like, yeah, it sucks, but you have to do it, can be really beneficial a lot of the
Yeah,
time.
or like, "Hey, you skipped it the last 3
Yeah.
weeks." You could put your head in the sand if you're coaching yourself, but if you've got someone being like, "Man, you keep skipping this work or cutting it short," and you're like, "I know, I'm so sorry."
And
To
then
that point,
sometimes the coach is going to help you find a strategy to
to get that work
do
in.
it differently. So one of the things that um, I do for myself is rather than being like, "Okay, I'm just going to go out and ride tempo," is I'll say, "Okay, I'm going to alternate with 5 minutes at tempo, 5 minutes at high endurance," which is basically tempo, but it in my head is different, so it has a little bit of change. And then next week is going to be the same total number of minutes at tempo, but it's going to be 8 minutes at tempo, 3 minutes endurance. And then the week after that is going to be 12 minutes at tempo, 2 minutes endurance. So finding that, using those kind of different strategies to get the work done so that it's more palatable for me as someone that hates doing tempo.
Some of the biggest work that I do, and my clients will call me a wizard sometimes, is I hate using this word because it seems malicious, but I will trick my clients into doing the work that they
Absolutely.
have to do. I do it all the time and I make it enjoyable and hidden. And I think that is so underrated. Like people don't realize how much that helps. Um, as instead of wrapping your head around work you don't want to do every single week, you're accidentally doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's huge. So like you trick yourself, I trick myself. I know my limitations, I know the work that I avoid, so I will actively be like, I'm gonna go lie to myself for an hour and go do, whatever it is that I'm avoiding. But when you're relatively new, or I mean, let's be honest, we're not all perfect at tricking ourselves into doing things we don't want to do. So it's so helpful to have someone, like you said, make it palatable. When you think there's only one way to accomplish something, there could be 10
Mm-hmm.
others. And on top of that, I think it's really the assessment period and the weekly assessments as a coach. Um, they can't be replicated in a template because I would say, especially with mixed sports, like how do you as an athlete know if you are limited by your squat mechanics, your total limit strength, your shoe choice? Like how having eyes on you can help reduce that complexity down to something super manageable, um,
Mm-hmm.
and help you work on a plan to build a movement up. Is it just a mental block? Are you afraid of something? Do you have an injury history that's making you avoid certain positions? Like this is stuff that I would say most people deal with. I don't know a single athlete who's over the age of 25 who doesn't have an injury history. um, and I think having a coach who's able to run those assessments and then have those conversations with you and be like, okay, I notice you struggle with XYZ. You've been making improvements on it, but I think we just need to change the work, or we need to change the way we approach it, or
Mm-hmm.
asking really difficult questions like, does it actually hurt or are you afraid to be hurt? There's so much in coaching that kind of cross I always say coaching is the most complicated career because people always talks about like, scope of practice, but we have to kind of dip into everything. And that's why I think so many people who are coaches accidentally overstep scope of practice because we're constantly involved in every piece,
Yeah.
like athlete mental, mental, physical, physio. Like we kind of have our hands in every pot. Um, and it's very easy to like, I think if you're not super experienced, it can become very easy to like overstep because we're kind of forced to.
Yeah.
Like you just have to. But I think that's one of the biggest things with coaching is like every single week I'm looking at my athletes and their work and their feedback and the words that they use, and did they use a smiley face or a frowny face, and are they tired? Is their life stressful next week? Should I take it? Like that is all the stuff that I think about every single time that I sit down and program. And I know it's the same for you as well. And it's like, there is no way. that an algorithm can do that.
The number of times that I've had an athlete that felt bad because they missed a workout, and my response was basically, "It's okay, life happens. Let's move on." And
Yeah,
that's just been the what they needed to know, that they wasn't the end of the world, that they missed their
yeah.
one workout this week is quite high. It happens
Hmm.
probably on almost a weekly basis with all the athletes I coach.
Yep. Yeah, or like someone will be, um, I'll just use bench as an example because nobody likes bench pressing, but um, someone will have like a really bad bench session and like it'll just set the tone for like the next couple weeks and bench just keeps going bad. And I've had clients who've worked with me long enough where they'll just be like, "Can we do something else? Like, can we just do something else that's going to build my chest strength? And can we just take benching out of my program?" And I'm like, "Okay, absolutely." Like, if it's
Yeah.
spinning you negatively every single upper day and you're not actively competing in powerlifting, you don't need to bench. Like, we'll just remove it and we'll work on other stuff that will hopefully bring greater strength back when you want to bring bench back, if ever. So it's like,
Mm,
again, having that person there, um, who can either be like, "Hey, do you have to be doing this? Like, you're beating your head against a wall, but you're not even competing. So like, what? Could we make
yeah.
this more fun? Could we have fun?" That blows a lot of people's minds too when they're like, "I'll do anything. I'll do whatever you tell me. I'll beat myself up, whatever you gotta make me do." And I'm like, "But what do you like to do?" And they're like, "I don't know, actually."
Yeah.
How do you have fun? It's kind of important.
Yeah. Absolutely, and there's one thing that, especially this is the people you in California, you don't have to deal with this, but us in the north where we have actual winter, like my trainer is set up over there, and I did 30 minutes yesterday, and I was over it, and I'm kind of like burnt out on the trainer for. So I have with a lot of my athletes in the winter, I plan every Sunday as Sunday anything outside, where it's just like, hey,
Go.
we're in the off season, we're in the base season. You can just go outside and do something different. And rather than spending another 2 hours, 3 hours on a treadmill on a trainer, which is mentally very taxing and physically more taxing than doing the same amount of time outside. But you can't go ride bikes outside. You can't really, it might not be a great day to go run outside. So let's just do something else. Go for a hike with your dog, go for a weighted walk, a ruck, go cross country skiing. As long as you put in the approximate right level of effort, and even the off season, that's kind of a bad thing, or not. That's kind of a subjective thing or a very varied thing.
Yeah.
Do it. It's going to be more beneficial than burning yourself out mentally in February.
Yeah. And being a coach and being able to like give people the okay to do that,
Yeah.
and still making sure that they are reaching the right level of intensity. Like they're not putting on
Mm.
snowshoes, but then sitting for, 30 minutes under a tree. Like I walked for an hour.
Yeah.
um, but I think that's athlete mental health is such a huge part of athlete performance. And I think everyone knows this, but something that um, Alex used to teach when he did his hybrid, the level one, when he would give those seminars, is he would talk about, because we've worked with so many military athletes and we've
Mm.
worked with so many martial artists and shift workers and things like that. Because I think all those people, they just have hybrid needs. Like we call it hybrid, but it's been a tactical athlete since day one. Um, Having green days where you just go outside and you do nothing is so important to allow your athlete to calm themselves and
Hmm.
re-regulate so that they can enter another week of intensity and intense training, especially if their job is also intense or they're missing sleep. Just allowing their CNS, their sympathetic nervous system, all to calm down with some outside time, some time away from intensity, some time away from hyper specific training,
Yeah.
is so essential for the athlete to re-enter the next work week with kind of renewed focus and um, even literally like their nervous system being prepared to handle again high stress, high stress, high stress. um,
And
And
that's not that's you talk about that example with tactical athletes, but that applies just as much to people that do an office job. And if they have an extra week where
with your
they do
kids,
something,
you
if
feel
they
like
do
a tactical athlete.
but even if you do like 5 hours extra in your week, that can have a significant effect on what your training should. And your training should always be aimed at providing the right stimulus, not providing the same stimulus. There's that idea of consistency, and sometimes consistency gets equated to being a consistency of volume where you always have to do the same thing, the same amount of everything every
Mhm.
week. But really, consistency is consistency of stimulus. So if you are sitting at a 10% higher stress level just in your life, you might need to do 10% less volume or 10% less intensity to have the same stimulus this week. And
Yeah.
that might reverberate. I always like to think of stress as kind of like a credit card where you can go over your limit, but if you go over your limit, it's going to take you longer to pay it back than
Yeah.
it took you to go over that limit initially.
Hmm.
It's faster to build stress than it is to get rid of it. So
Yeah.
you might be at a reduced state for more time. Uh, and I'm thinking of the function in my head because I see it as a inverse curve.
Draw it for
Uh,
me.
yeah, but it's always better. It's always easier for someone someone externally, so a coach, a training partner, whatever, to see that sometimes than we can ourselves.
Catch it early too. Catch it
Yeah.
early. I think that's so important. Like, I don't know how many times I've told athletes, like, hey, you're programming this week. If you feel like you can do more, don't.
Mm-hmm.
Don't. Like, you're gonna feel like you've got extra. Don't use it. Keep
Yeah.
it, please. Because you're not gonna feel like that in another week. Like, telling people to do less is probably one of the hardest things that I do
Yeah.
as a coach. But it inevitably always ends up they're like, oh yeah, wow, I feel really tired and I did less. I'm like, yeah. Like a really slow motion, like traffic accident, like kind of concertinas. And, I think for a coach, you're the guy that's like, this is me being visual. Um, you're the guy that's like in observing the accident happen, right? You're the guy that's calling it in on the news that's like accident on this major highway, and your athlete is the car that's like 4 miles back on their way to work. No idea that the accident just happened and everything's slowing down. Like, you're like, take this detour now. And your athlete's like, no, this way's faster. And you're like, take this detour now.
It's a good analogy. Yeah.
Inevitably, if they don't take that detour, they're sitting in traffic and they're late to work. It's definitely interesting, especially because you and I both do our coaching and training peaks. We're even able to track things like heart rate trends. If their watch syncs their resting heart rate, we can track that
Yeah.
start to go up. If sleep is poor, we start to see that. Even things like heart rate recovery and individual workouts. There's just so much oversight. Um, And coaches aren't right all the time. I think that's important. Like, I don't think I'm perfect. I don't make the right choices all the time. But I think the fact that I know that and I'm creative and I'm able to take the next feedback and make adjustments on the fly is the value of having a coach. Whereas an
Mm-hmm.
algorithm is going to be like, I think this is the right choice. And then it's the wrong choice. And it's up to the athlete to figure out how to correct that.
Yeah.
Um, but Yeah, I feel like we talked about this for a long time, but
Yeah.
um, no, I'm super excited. I hope that people enjoy using the templates. I think that's the most
Mhm.
important thing. Like, I really just hope that they have fun playing with them, and I know that they will. But I think it's just fun. It's fun for us to kind of look at the way that CHP has grown, and I think 5 years ago, even we were still kind of this really niche company that worked with kind of just the crazies, like just the crazy people. And there was this sort of idea that we only worked with elite athletes or we only worked with crazy people. But in reality, the whole time, CHP has been working with all manner of individuals, parents, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Um, and I think now that with social media and the ability of like us and athletes to kind of talk on social media, we've all kind of realized that a lot of us we're all crazy, but we're a lot more like regular. There's a lot more regular people um, than we thought. And there's even more regular people that want to get into hybrid training because
Yeah.
it's strength and conditioning. We just keep talking about the necessity of training for lean mass as you get over the age of 30, the necessity of training your heart and your heart health. And people just want to know how to do that and have fun doing it. Um, and I'm super excited that the way that we're going with these templates makes them more accessible um, to that sort of entry level athlete.
Mhm.
I think that's been the coolest thing that you and I have kind of decided on is like, okay, yeah, we want to have a template that can serve someone who wants to do something crazy. Honestly, they should just get a coach. But if for any reason financially that they can't, we want the template to be able to be close. But also, if someone just wants to get into running and lifting for health
Mhm.
reasons, how do we have a program in place for them where they're not going to be like, wow, I can't do this.
Mhm.
These people are crazy. Like, I just want to be able to play with my grandkids. I don't I don't need to PR my deadlift. So I'm excited because I think that this will finally pave the route to, I mean, maybe we'll go app based, maybe we'll stay in spreadsheets. I don't know. I would love to have a cool fancy glistening app, but we'll get there eventually. But for right now, I think this is like the closest thing, if not more functional than a lot of the apps out there, which is why we're not using them.
Yeah, especially a lot of the coaching apps, they're missing some of the functionalities that we need in order to make it work. I will leave it there.
Yes. We did not reinvent the wheel.
No.
We had to build our own boat. Um, but yeah, I'm just excited to hopefully have more options for people and get more people involved in training, quote unquote hybrid or for health
Mhm.
in a way that is comfortable and sustainable and fun and um, that they can have some sort of longevity in the sport instead of burning out or feeling like they have to program hop or something like that. Like
Yeah.
I'm just really confident that what you've created is going to be much more effective for people lasting a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely the goal, and to make it easier for new people, or even for people that come from endurance that want to start strength training more,
Hmm.
and don't want to just do physio exercises for an hour. They actually want to strength train in a
Yeah.
beneficial way, in a way that'll show them results. I think this is definitely a good way to go. Um, and I think one thing we didn't mention is there's definitely, and especially with these templates now, it's going to be even easier um, to use the templates in a preseason and then work with a coach in the on season. So, say for example, someone's aiming for, um, they're starting their training in January, like so many people do, and they're aiming to do a gravel race in July, and
Hmm.
they could use the cycling plus functional fitness template from January to the end of April, especially since that template is kind of written with the mentality that people will be doing shorter workouts indoors, or when it's cold, when you want to spend less time outdoors.
Yeah.
And then from May until their event, work with a coach to have very specific and more targeted, targeted targeted training, because sometimes I think people they see, okay, I have to work with a coach for my entire plan, but if you said use something like our templates as a good foundation build, and then for your preseason, and then start working with a coach specifically for your event, that's going to be a good middle ground. Obviously, if you want to work with a coach the whole time, you shouldn't not do that, because that's going to be
Yeah.
the extra time to get to for your coach to get to know you, to learn what makes you tick, to figure out how to trick you into working hard effectively is going to be really
In your
beneficial.
off season.
But
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot that can be done with the middle ground between the two.
Yeah. I think that's a really, 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 really good point. Especially because our coaching doesn't have contracts. We don't have
Hmm.
minimums. Obviously, you can purchase multiple months at a discount, but like one thing that I've always been super um even though, it does serve athletes to work with a coach for more than a month, like, I know that financially for a lot of people, it's a big investment. And something I've always been super passionate about is like, if you need to dip in and dip out of coaching as you can financially afford it, I want that to be accessible because I want you to work with a coach for as long as you can,
Hmm.
and then if you have to take time away from that coach, it would be awesome, like you said, if you could just use a template to keep yourself kind of up. And I think a lot of athletes do that. They'll use a template in their off season, or even just use the coaching that was written by their coach as a template, and then continue that um, with some variation. So, oh my gosh, excuse me. I told you I wouldn't cough, and I did anyway. Um, but yeah, I think what I'm the most excited about is everything you and I have discussed, and being able to have an ecosystem that
Yeah,
our
it's a good word.
athletes can, yeah, like play in, no matter what their goal is, no matter what their financial situation is. Like, I want there to be something for everyone. Um, and now, when you purchase a template, you're not getting one, you're getting 7 or 8 different templates. Or how many are in there?
I think with the strength plus 5K, you could theoretically do it's over 50 different variations that you can have with if you consider all the different things you could possibly do. I think it's over 50, definitely over 30, probably over 50 different variations you could have.
It's nuts, and that's awesome. Like, yeah, that's awesome. So this, I think, is just really exciting because it's allowing us to actually create this training world for our athletes to live in, play in, train in, and really feel in control of their results and in control of their training. I think in a way that we've come close to, but we haven't really, really done before. So if someone wants to, maybe they saw the cycling and functional fitness template, or they did it, and they want to follow you on Instagram. What is your Instagram handle first?
What is my Instagram handle? Oh no.
Isn't it Trevor Tartaglia?
It is Trevor. It's Trevor.Tartaglia. Yeah.
And there's a G in there, folks. I'll
There's
put
a
it in
G
the
in
notes.
there. Yeah.
But and then let's say they've done the template, they followed you, and they want to do either a consultation with you, or they
Mhm.
want to go to you for coaching. Um, and they want to reach out to you. Should they do that there? Should I give them your email? How should people contact you?
Yeah, definitely through Instagram is the best way to reach me.
Okay.
If there'll be as much about cycling as there will be about my dog and my chickens, but that's okay.
That's
Uh, but yeah, you definitely reach out to me if you're interested in coaching for cycling and especially in a hybrid space. Um, I work with a lot of trail runners too. So if you're interested in trail running, mixing that with CrossFit or just functional strength training or general strength training, definitely reach out for to me for that. I like working with trail running people in trail running. I find trail running it's kind of like the triathlon of running, where it's very relaxed and it's people are there to improve themselves and not so much race the race, which is a fun thing.
hmm
Um, if ever people are interested in knowing more about picking bikes for hybrid athletes, they can definitely reach out to me and ask questions about that. I love talking about bikes all the time, especially with my background in engineering. I can kind of sift through the marketing blabber about what's actually beneficial and what's actually beneficial for athletes that are on the heavier side of the spectrum.
Yeah. Wider,
Um,
bigger legs. It really changes a lot.
Absolutely, it changes a lot. And this is one thing that me and Alex disagree on a lot. I actually don't think someone should buy a carbon bike from 2016 as their first bike. I think they should buy a gravel bike because it just works better and it's more comfortable. And you can get on trails, you can get outside, which is sweet. So,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Well, he bought as my first bike. He bought me a hardtail mountain bike.
it's a good
Um,
choice too.
and I remember like getting on that thing, and he was like, "All right, let's learn how to ride." He made me bike up a mountain, Trevor,
That's fine.
for my first ride.
What's the
I had
worst
a
that
panic
happens?
attack.
What's the worst that happens?
I made it down.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but yeah, no, I agree. I'm a huge fan of getting a bicycle that can handle how many times I fall off of it
Yeah.
because it's a lot. It's a lot. Okay, well, awesome. Um, thank you for everything.
Thanks for having me.
Duh. You've again saved my life. Folks, follow Trevor, work with Trevor. I'd like to get Trevor on the podcast again because I feel like we have so much we could talk about. But just in general, keep your eyes peeled for V3 templates as they come out. They'll be trickled, and this way you guys can really get a sense for where we're moving with our programming, with our templates. And then if you haven't been coached by us before, hopefully this gives you some insight into all of the things that we do as coaches that we tried to put into the templates, but then there's even more than that we do behind the scenes all the time for you. So if you have any questions about the difference between templates and coaching or anything like that, reach out to Trevor or myself. We'll always be as clear as possible with you and help you find something that's going to work uh, in your budget and for your needs, while also being honest with you about the limitations of both. So thank you. And yeah, I mean, you'll be seeing a lot more of Trevor soon. So,
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. I think I'll ride my bike because I can actually ride outside today.
oh, go do it. All right.